Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for September 14th, 2017. Slash Film Daily is a podcast published daily every weekday on slashfilm.com, covering the latest news and features from the site. On today's show, in the news, we're going to be talking about a new study that definitively tells us if Rotten Tomato scores determine or impact the box office. We're going to be talking about Stephen King's Suffer the Little Children, which is getting a movie adaptation in the wake of it. Stan Lee has already filmed a bunch of Marvel cameos, find out how many, and the Apple TV 4K announcements that we didn't get to cover yesterday. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to do something unusual. We're going to be talking about that Devin Faraci situation that you may have seen on film Twitter. We don't usually get into that kind of area, but we'll be talking about that because I feel like the podcast is a good arena to have a discussion about that. And in the mailbag, we'll be talking about the Lucasfilm Story Group and their role in the upcoming Star Wars movies. I'm Peter Sciretta, and with me on today's podcast are Slash Film writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
And Slash Film editor, Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Okay, guys, let's just jump into the news because I think this is going to be a long one. A new study says that Rotten Tomatoes scores have no impact on the box office. I was being a little facetious by saying it definitively says that. Nothing can definitively say that. But what do we know, HD?
Yeah, so this study was published by the Data and Analytics Project at the University of Southern California's Entertainment Technology Center. It was conducted by Yves Bergquist, and it came right on the tails of that New York Times article titled Attack of Rotten Tomatoes. I think that was the headline, but it was basically positing the theory that Rotten Tomatoes was the culprit of a rotten summer movie box office season. But according to the study, that is not the case. So the study analyzed data from Rotten Tomatoes since 2000, and it came to the conclusion that Rotten Tomatoes scores have never played a very big role in driving box office performance, either positively or negatively. And it does also mention that there's an interesting correlation that's starting to come to the surface in which audience scores and critic scores are starting to be increasingly correlated. And the study the study theorizes that audiences are becoming experts at smelling a bad movie and staying away.
Yeah, so the study says, I think, what we said previously on the podcast and on the site, that it's just kind of social media and audiences becoming smarter about what they're spending their money at the cinema. And I think that's going to escalate as, obviously this whole world becomes more connected on social media. You're going to hear the bad buzz sooner and sooner. And, that smell, you stay away. But going from bad to good, one of the good films at multiplexes this past weekend was Stephen King's It, and that did record numbers because it was good and because people wanted to see it. Now Stephen King's whole library, I'm guessing studios are pouring over it and trying to get rights and trying to get other Stephen King movies to the big screen. Jacob, you have news about one more.
Yes, right now, the Stephen King short story Suffer the Little Children is the next Stephen King project that's been announced. This is on top of numerous other movies and TV shows that are in the works right now. There's definitely a Stephen King renaissance going on. And as a quick side note, our own Chris Evangelista recently ranked every single Stephen King movie and miniseries for the site, and came to the conclusion I think a lot of people have realized is that most Stephen King movies are really bad. So in the wake of it being really good, I'm curious if the trend will be maybe making good this time. But I guess the story here is that Sean Carter, a young filmmaker, up-and-comer, responsible for the 2009 movie The Killing Room and the upcoming horror movie Keep Watching, is signed on to direct Suffer the Little Children. And it is an adaptation of the 1972 story of the same name. Interestingly, it wasn't actually published in a book, in a collection, until 1993's Nightmares and Dreamscapes. So even though it was written in the 70s and comes from a very different era of Stephen King's career, if you kind of read it in the era it was published, it's this blast of nastiness at a time when Stephen King was getting less nasty. Early King is very gruesome. He's very mean. He's very brutal and very unforgiving. And Suffer Little Children comes from that era. And it's about a teacher who starts to realize that her young students in her classroom may not be human and may be creatures plotting some kind of takeover. And I can't imagine the ending of the story making to the big screen today. It's a very upsetting, very upfront, very violent conclusion. But this Sean Carter guy, I'm not familiar with his work, but he did receive a filmmaking grant from Martin Scorsese, the great Martin Scorsese. So clearly there's something going on here with this guy. And I don't know why this short story. I don't know why this talent for this short story. And for all I know, this is in the works before it came out. But you know what? I'm all for more Stephen King movies, especially if people are going to start realizing that they can be good. I'm curious if HT and Peter have any opinions on more Stephen King movies like this.
I just want to say I'm going to link Chris's piece ranking all the Stephen King movies in the show notes. So if you want to find out where it ranks in that listing, go read it. I don't know. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with Stephen King. I feel like he's written so many things, and not a lot of them are great, but a few, the select few that are great are incredible. And I haven't read a lot of his short story work, but I know a couple of those have been turned into movies, and some good movies at that. So I'm interested to see more of those, exploring more of those, because a Stephen King short story, might be a novella in someone else's arena. His normal books are at the range that, you're cutting so much to get it into a 120-minute movie. So, I'm interested to see more. What about you, HD?
Yeah, I'm also kind of half and half on Stephen King. I've read more of his bad books than I've read of his good books. So I welcome more adaptations and movies that offer original stories. So, I look forward to it. I think it could be good or bad, essentially, considering the ratio of his the quality of his stories.
It's interesting. I usually think he has a great first half of his book. His setups and his, setting up the characters are always awesome. And it's always like that last third that is really disappointing to me with his books. Yeah. Yeah,
this is a regular issue with him. And I think that's why his short story collections tend to be really strong, is that when he's working maybe 10 to 50 pages, he doesn't have the space to set you up for disappointment. He tends to deliver home runs more often in his short stories. While Suffer Little Children is not a short story that I remember vividly, it makes good on the promise of what it sets out to do. It's just this short, nasty, intense little story that even King himself says has no redeeming social merit whatsoever. That's kind of the appeal. So I'm wondering if they can capture that angle, because I feel like a lot of King adaptations, especially the bad ones, tend to pull the emotional or more horrifying punches.
What are some of the short stories from Stephen King that have been adapted into movies?
Stand By Me.
It's a novella technically, but yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just actually do HG. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so the short stories that have spawned, segments in Creepshow have spawned Children of the Corn, Cat's Eye, Maximum Overdrive.
Terrible movie, but you have to see it, guys. You have to see Maximum Overdrive. Go see that mess.
The Lawnmower Man, Graveyard Shift, The Night Flyer. I guess this isn't the greatest of a line of movies. 1408, No Smoking.
1408 is a really good movie. I like that one a lot. But even looking at this list, we put up a list of all the short stories that have been adapted. Like, The Mangler is a good short story. It's a terrible movie. Night Flyer is a good short story. It's a terrible movie.
I like that. I like the TV show Nightmares and Dreamscapes that had some good. I think it was like 1 hour episodes, 8 1 hour episodes, and that was based on his short stories.
Yeah, so I feel like, just like the adaptations of his full length novels, the short stories are hit and miss, and I feel like there's really good material here that's just waiting to be made into something that's not garbage.
we'll have to see if it actually gets made. Moving on. Stan Lee has had a cameo in every single Marvel Studios production. He's had a cameo in almost all the Marvel movies, even outside of Marvel Studios, the stuff that Fox has done, stuff that Sony's done. And we have just learned that he has filmed a bunch of upcoming cameos for Marvel movies. HT, what do we know?
Yes, so he is confirmed to have filmed cameos for Avengers Infinity War, Avengers 4, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Black Panther, and Thor Ragnarok. So Chris Hemsworth has already lauded Stan Lee's cameo in Thor Ragnarok as one of his best and funniest yet. But we don't know much about what his cameos in the other 4 movies will be. And he has not yet been confirmed for Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Homecoming sequels or cameos in those films, but neither of those are yet in production. So those are 5 more movies that we will be guaranteed Stan Lee cameos in, which is good because the comic book creator is now 94 years old. He's pushing 95, which is he's getting close to the centennial mark right there. And he's been easing back on his comic conventions appearances as well as other outside appearances. So it may be that we'll be seeing fewer cameos or maybe shorter cameos from him in the future. But he's always been eager to just show up in movies of the creations that he's made.
Well, it seems like they're doing more and more of these where I think the last set of cameos were directed by James Gunn, the one that you saw in Spider-Man Homecoming, Guardians, a bunch of them, like all in one shot. Instead of having Stan Lee have to fly to each one of these film productions. So I'm assuming he shot, a lot of these in one big chunk. It's interesting that they're doing that because it's interesting to see if they actually fit in the movies as well as they would if he was actually there. And sadly, I'm fearing, Stan Lee's life is he doesn't have that many years left on him. What happens if he were to die tomorrow? Would they still include these 5 cameos in the upcoming films as a tribute, or would that be weird watching the films with seeing him pop up kind of in a comedy capacity?
I don't think so. I think he's such a huge ham. I think that Ghost Stan Lee would get a kick out of him coming back from the grave to appear a few more times.
Yeah, I think
I agree with that.
I think they should pull Stan Lee into a studio for a weekend and just film, as many possible cameos as possible on green screens and sets, just so that they could have Ghost Stan Lee in the next 100 years of Marvel movies. They could just find ways.
What I think they should do is film like a whole Marvel one-shot surrounding his character, which is now a character, according to Kevin Feige, who is consistently showing up in all these Marvel movies, and just have them cut from like that one shot or something, and then release the one shot later or something like that. Because he's canonically now a character who shows up at life-altering events throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He doesn't have a name yet, but
yeah, he's one of the Watchers.
Yes.
It would if they could find a way, if they could find a writer that could connect all the dots of all those cameos and put it into a short that's not more than 15 minutes long, it would be brilliant. But I think that's a lot of ground to cover. I'm not sure if they could do that. Moving on, Apple had their keynote on Tuesday morning, and part of the keynote, they announced a new Apple TV, Apple TV 4K. I know none of us have a 4K television yet. I have projectors in my house, and 4K projectors are very cost prohibitive at this point, so I don't see myself getting a 4K projector anytime soon, even though I could benefit from 4K. Like most people, I don't think if you're watching a 60-inch TV and you're 6 feet away from the television, your eyes can't make out the difference of the pixels from a 4K TV to HD TV, at least according to a lot of studies. But if it was on a projector at, the size that I have it in my living room, I could benefit from that. But anyways, okay, so why should you care about the Apple TV 4K is, number one, if you have bought HD movies on iTunes, Apple has made a deal with the studios to basically give you an upgrade to 4K. So if you buy this Apple TV 4K, you now own the 4K versions of all these movies. So think about this like as if you had bought DVDs and the studios were like, here, we're going to upgrade all your DVDs to HD Blu-ray copies. I mean, that's awesome. I know that Apple probably had to fight hard to get that. That is really cool. And they're also going to be selling 4K movies for the same price that they sell HD movies, which I think is $15 or $20. If you go to a retail store, and try to buy a 4K movie, I think they start at like $30. So to undercut the physical retail price, I think this is the death of physical media right here. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really else big about this other than those points. What do you guys think? Is this something that will encourage you to get a 4K television, or is this something you don't even care about?
I love my Blu-rays. I love my Blu-rays so much, Peter.
But your Blu-rays are only 1080p. You're already in the past.
But I just don't want the future to be digital. I don't like the idea of my movies being able to vanish in a bureaucratic hiccup someday. I know people always say it's not going to happen, but I like the fact that I can, at any time I want, go to my library, which I call my DVD and book room, pull down a movie I want to watch and watch it. I don't care if it's on Netflix. I don't care if Apple has made it available for purchase in 4K. It's there.
But here's how you do it, Jacob. You buy the Blu-rays that have a free digital copy along with it. Then you unlock the free digital copy on your iTunes. And now if you had done that for all the Blu-rays that had digital copies, you would now have 4K versions of those movies waiting on your Apple TV 4K whenever you end up buying that.
You see, Peter, you're a very smart man, but I'm also a very sentimental garbage person who likes having his stuff on display, damn it. So my whole this is actually a really cool thing. If you like digital movies, I think this is genuinely cool, and I'm very happy for people who have gone this direction. But you casually tossing around the phrase "death of physical media," it bums me out. Not gonna lie, it really makes me want to cry just a little bit. But HT, what do you think about this?
This might be heresy for someone who is a movie buff, but I don't really care about 4K. I just have my computer and I watch everything on Netflix and or rent it on Amazon.
Oh, you're such a millennial.
I'm a millennial, but I also side somewhat with Jacob on the physical media side because I refuse to read books that are not physical copies. I get headaches when I try to read them on a Kindle or anything. So I need that. And if I especially love a movie, I will often buy it on Blu-ray. So
what about renting movies? How do you rent movies?
Just on Amazon, usually for a temporary amount of time for $3.99. And again, Netflix and Hulu, my best friends.
Yeah. I mean, I've said in the past on this podcast that I have gone from a person that owned 3,000 DVDs to a person who owns a drawer of Blu-rays. And typically now I don't buy movies. I will rent them because I think for $3.99 or however much it costs to rent, I'm probably not going to watch that movie enough times to make it worth that $20 price tag. So, but it's cool that I will now be able to rent movies for the same price as HD movies to watch them in 4K. That'll help me whenever I end up getting this 4K projector. But I don't see that day coming anytime soon. Okay, guys, we're going to go out of the news and we're going to get a little bit serious here. I'm not sure if you noticed, there's been some news about a former movie blogger named Devin Faraci, who is Devin Faraci. Okay, so he started writing for the site called Chud. He started this site with the Alamo Drafthouse, which eventually became Birth, Death Movies. I think it was called Badass Digest at first. And he was known to be a very abrasive blogger. He would maybe even a borderline bully. I know Damon Lindelof famously left Twitter because of him and has said on a podcast that he was forced into therapy based on his quote-unquote bullying. But my experiences with him is he was a great writer. He was probably one of the best writers in the movie space. In person, he was always nice to me, and he was supportive of me when Slash Film came about. But he was never a friend of mine. He was a huge feminist advocate in his later years. In October 2016, a woman came out claiming she was groped by him in 2003. So it wasn't like something recent. Devin apologized immediately, but admitted he didn't remember the incident. Shortly after, he was removed from his position as editor of the site and left to get help for his alcoholism. I know he's also become a Buddhist. He kind of disappeared from the online landscape. After this happened, others came out with accusations against Devin, one of who apparently received a personal email from Alamo Drafthouse founder, owner Tim League, asking that she keep the dialogue about the accusation between them. This is something that has recently come about. Devin has been gone from the internet. He appeared on Letterboxd, that app. He would write his reviews for a selected few that would read them on his personal Letterboxd account. And, his Twitter account, started retweeting certain tweets. It was dormant for a long time. But apparently we have learned that Devin was still working for the Alamo Drafthouse. Who I should say, Alamo Drafthouse is this movie theater chain that started in Austin, Texas. It's amazing. They own Mondo, who makes all those prints. They're incredible. You can eat food there. They don't tolerate, texting or being on your phone. It's just, they are the number one movie theater I've ever been to. And they own Badass Digest. And apparently, Devin was removed from power at Badass Digest.
Birth Movies Death, Peter.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, they changed their name to Birth Movies Death. Removed from power from Birth Movies Death. And apparently he's been still working for the Drafthouse all this time, writing copy for them behind the scenes without credit. Fantastic Fest is coming up in Austin, Texas. And the programming catalog came out this past week, and some of the entries in the catalog were credited to Devin, which set off kind of a shitstorm in the local Austin community. So much so that Tim League, the founder of the Alamo Drafthouse, released the following statement. I'll read from the statement. I'm not going to read the full statement. I'll link to it in the show notes. Quote, seeing the work that Devin has been doing to acknowledge his faults, to address his addiction, and to better himself, I thought it was important to contribute to his recovery process by helping him with some means to earn a living. Once it became clear that his efforts were sincere, I offered Devin copywriting work at Alamo Drafthouse and has recently expanded to include writing blurbs for our Fantastic Fest guide. And here's another quote from it. Human beings make mistakes, and when they acknowledge those mistakes and embark upon a journey of personal improvement, they deserve forgiveness. If, God forbid, I somehow find myself in a similar place down the road, my hope is that my actions up until this point have warranted others to offer the same help to me. So basically, Tim League is saying that he believes in giving people a second chance, but notes that Devin, quote, does not hold any leadership position in Alamo Drafthouse or Fantastic Fest and is not involved at all with Birth Movies Death in any capacity. It's also weird that Tim is in this statement calling it sexual misconduct and sexual harassment when Devin was accused of grabbing a woman by her genitals, which I think is sexual assault. But today, I know this is a long story, guys. Today, Fantastic Fest programmer Todd Brown, who is, an esteemed programmer, producer, he issued the following statement, quote, I would like to be very clear that despite over a decade of work as the director of the international programming at the Fantastic Fest, I have had no advanced knowledge of this decision, nor knowledge that Devin was contributing to the programming guide. I am still processing my feelings both about this decision and the fact that I, among others, was not consulted in the making of it. He has stepped down as a programmer for Fantastic Fest for all these years. Another programmer came out to Hollywood Reporter, not named, but he had been with the Alamo Drafthouse for 7 years, And he claims that he finds, quote, "I find the statement to be disingenuous on Tim's part because there's never any question of whether Devin would be given that opportunity. It wasn't offered after a period of growth and change. Devin just rapidly moved into his current copywriting/editing job after stepping down from Birth Movie's death." Okay, so that's the situation, guys. I'll start this off to say that I'm disappointed in Tim League and the Alamo Drafthouse. I know that many people within the Los Angeles film community are still friends with Devin, and he's a very charming guy in person. And when you're friends with someone like this, it's hard to, see the forest for the trees. You don't see a lot of outspokenness from this community because of their personal relationship with him. And I've always been friendly with Devin on set, even though I've never been, necessarily his friend. I haven't spoken to him since the incident, although I've seen him at some events. I'm not beyond giving someone like this a second chance, or would this be the third chance or fourth chance? I don't know. But it seems wrong to me to give him a spotlight in a place with the same film community that he caused so much hurt. The message that Tim and the Drafthouse are making by giving him the spotlight, I think, marginalizes his victims. And it seems from the accounts that Tim did not give Devin the job after he earned it after showing change. It seems like he just went from Birth Movie's death to the Drafthouse. I wish no ill will for Devin. I hope he grows and learns from this incident. I have said in the past that it was gross when people were saying Colin Trevorrow should be fired from Star Wars. I think it would be wrong for me to say that, Devin should be fired from the Drafthouse and demand that. I don't think anybody should be fired. I do think he deserves a second chance somewhere, but it seems so wrong. And not only that he does, but being spotlighted in this public capacity in front of, if you followed this incident from the beginning, this initial woman who came out, had to stop going to the Drafthouse Theater. She had to avoid, block certain things because seeing him come up in her feed would bring the memories back. So I think it is disingenuous, and it is unfortunate that Devin is being given a spotlight for his work. I mean, what do you think, Jacob?
This is a very touchy subject for me because I live in Austin. I've been going to the Drafthouse for 10 years. I've met Tim League. I've been to his house for his Christmas parties. I think he's always been very kind to me. I've interviewed him on several occasions. He's
one of the nicest guys I've met in this business, and this is probably why he is employing Devin.
Yeah, so when I'm disappointed by the Drafthouse and by Tim League and by Fantastic Fest, it comes from a place of these are institutions that I hold very close and dear to my heart. They are incredibly important to me, not just as, that's where I go to the movies, or that's my favorite film festival, but places where I've met some of my best friends, where I've had incredible moments that I'll never forget. Tim League arranged for me to propose to my now wife at the theater where we first met. Tim League is a stand-up man who actually went above and beyond to make one of my most happiest moments happen. So it brings me no pleasure to talk about how disappointed I am by this. It's a case where Devin Faraci and I are not friends. We've had interactions in the past where he was perfectly friendly to me. But I kept on hearing stories, especially from Fantastic Fest regulars and from people in the Drafthouse community, that he's not a good guy. I kept on blowing them off. For years, I blew them off. For years, I ignored them because I enjoyed his writing. And for years, I ignored them because I ignored how much of a bully he was online because I enjoyed his writing. And people at Birth Movie's death, I can consider many of them friends. I know many of them in real life. And I know that some of them were as shocked by this as I was. So the whole thing, it feels very much like a wound that's being torn open again. Because even though I have no personal beef with Devin Faraci, I know so many friends, Drafthouse regulars, Austin locals. I'm texting a friend of mine who's a local filmmaker he was just questioning. He has nothing, doesn't even write in the movie blogosphere, and he was texting me saying, "Does this mean I need to boycott the Drafthouse?" I don't know, because he was so concerned by this. And it's just a case where for years I ignored things because it was convenient, and now I feel like they're expecting us to just forgive and forget. And yeah, maybe Devin deserves a second chance. Maybe he has reformed. Maybe he is a better person now. But throwing him back in the same community where he has left scars does nobody any good. And I feel this is a case of Tim League trying to be a good friend and not understanding that he's representing the Drafthouse. He's representing Neon Films, which he co-founded. He's representing Mondo. He's representing hundreds, if not thousands, of employees who now are being tainted by a figure who has hurt a lot of people. And I wish him the best. I hope he has healed. I hope he has moved on. And I have so many friends who are good friends with him who say he has gotten his act together. But I genuinely feel like this is the wrong, incorrect choice on just about every level.
Yeah, I think even if you were to give him a second chance, it should be in the background. It should be as a copy writer. Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't be with this credited spotlight work. HT, do you have any feelings about this situation?
Well, I am not as familiar with the situation as you are because I don't have an Alamo Drafthouse in my area. I'm not as close to the community as both of you are. I only know of Devin Faraci. I think that it was underhanded of Drafthouse to not to rehire him immediately after he stepped down from Birth Movie's death, because the film community was given the impression that he was going to leave his position to reflect on his actions. He was going to, as you said, go into rehabilitation for alcoholism, and it seemed like that was the appropriate thing to do. But we're going almost immediately back into the field and going back into writing, even though it's uncredited, I think for me seems like it wasn't taking into account the feelings and concerns of the people that he victimized and the people that he bullied. So I don't think that Drafthouse went about this the right way. And I think I do sympathize with the idea of giving second chances, but I don't think that this was the way to do it.
I mean, obviously he's friends with Devin and sticking by him, but it's probably not the smartest business decision. It's not the smartest, if you care about your customers and those that have been hurt by his actions, it seems like a really, really sleazy, and I don't know, it feels wrong.
Well, I guess the final thing I want to say is that I feel really crap about this because it means that a place I like going to and a film festival I love going to are making me feel real bad, and that's really selfish. And I should be thinking more about the people who have been harmed and can't even consider going back to enjoying the things I want to enjoy. So I'm in this weird situation where my initial gut reaction is, oh, I want things to be better again. At the same time, I'm worried they never will be because I can't overlook how things that are important to me have potentially hurt people who are more important than me.
So yeah, we'll have to watch the situation and see if anything else develops. But let's move on from. Does anybody else have any parting thoughts on this? Okay, guys, let's move on into the mailbag to something more positive, I guess.
All right, let's laugh again, guys.
Yeah. Yay! Sherwin from the Bay Area asks, "Hey Peter, it was discussed on the podcast previously why JJ Abrams didn't have a plan or outline beyond episode 7, and all I could help but wonder wasn't that supposed to be the job of the Lucasfilm Story Group? Perhaps I misunderstood what their purpose is, but I had thought that they were supposed to oversee and steer Star Wars canon and stories so that there was a single cohesive continuity. Does their influence not expand to the films? I had thought it would be similar to how there was at one point a Transformers stories group that would determine the films for the next decade or so. Anyways, I find it puzzling that the current trilogy wasn't hashed out before Episode 7 even started filming. At least that's what it seems right now. Even MCU had a loose outline of where they wanted to go, which eventually led to the Avengers film and beyond. I do listen daily thanks to you and the crew. Okay, I'll say some quick things, and I'll start this off as I was hoping when they announced this, the Lucasfilm Story Group, I was hoping that was going to be their job, is to kind of plan this out, because nothing bothers me more when there's a TV show that seems like, it's a great setup and it seems like they're making it up as they go along. I want to know that there's a plan, not just with, TV shows, but with these cinematic universes. And it seems, though, from early on, it was made clear from Pablo and others that the filmmakers were given their kind of like reign to do whatever they want. And basically the Lucasfilm Story Group, what their responsibilities are. And this is my assumption. By the way, I contacted Pablo Hidalgo, the head of, or one of the heads of the Lucasfilm Story Group, to come on today or to answer this question. And he declined respectively. And he's a good person, but he obviously didn't want to tackle this on here. Anyways, from what I've gotten from him in public settings and interviews, is that the Lucasfilm Story Group is kind of there to facilitate the filmmaker and screenwriter's vision to, to make sure that it fits within canon, and that the, future stories, be it books, video games, comic books, TV shows, that it, is not breaking canon in any way and is cohesive. But I don't think they were ever, in a room like, let's plan out these 3 Star Wars films and have a treatment or an outline for, these filmmakers. The filmmaker, Rian Johnson has said that he had like almost complete creative reign to do whatever he wanted with The Last Jedi. So that's what I think is going on here, that they're treating it like, I don't know. They're treating it like, just like have a filmmaker come on and pick it up from there. Do you know what I mean? There might be some threads that have been left open and some ideas of where it could go, but there is no like grand plan. And, this is my speculation. We tried to get someone from Lucasfilm Story Group to come on here and, tell us for sure, but that's my reading of it. Jacob, you have some thoughts.
I do. My main reaction is that I'm kind of glad it's this way, because if theoretically Lucasfilm had planned out a sequel trilogy from beat to beat, film to film, completely hired even a single director, that leaves so little room for the alchemy that happens when you find the perfect character or a perfect casting and things click in surprising and fun ways. I remember there were stories going around a couple years ago about how Rian Johnson was asked to tweak the Last Jedi screenplay when Lucasfilm realized just how much the audiences loved all the new characters like Finn and Rey and Poe Dameron, and he ended up actually consolidating a lot of the new characters and a lot of their business into the new characters because people responded to them so positively and strongly. And I think that kind of flexibility is really important in any kind of franchise, the ability to recognize this works, this doesn't, and have the wiggle room to pivot. And I don't want Star Wars to be something that's like mathematically lined out. I want Star Wars to be the kind of sandbox that has rules that are maybe overseen by a story group that's there to make sure you stay in that box, make sure you play by the rules, but offers up all the necessary toys to let filmmakers do what they do. And so I'm all for the existence of story groups to bounce around ideas, help filmmakers, but I also feel like making it too rigid is a huge mistake.
How about you, HT? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, my impression of the Lucasfilm Story Group was that they're just the gatekeepers for continuity, like you said. I think it's funny that this listener mentioned the MCU as even them having a loose outline when they are the kind of gold standard for having a sort of very rigid through line for all their movies. Whereas, I think that it's a little bit looser and more dependent on the filmmakers for both Lucasfilm and other franchises.
It's just interesting, though. I wish, I agree, Jacob, that I don't think that it should have a rigid outline of what the trilogy should be. But I kind of wish that they had something planned. Like, I feel like Rey, in the original drafts of Force Awakens, as we've talked previously, she was, Han and Leia's daughter. I think that's clear in some moments they're left in the film, and I think in the final cut, that conclusion was taken out of the final draft of the film and the final cut of the film. And I think when JJ ended up leaving Force Awakens to Disney and Lucasfilm, there wasn't like some set like, oh, who are Rey's parents? I don't think it was decided. I think it was Ryan's ball to pick up and to go on with it. And I feel like there should be a plan, because I think it's so much more rewarding if we can go back and look at Force Awakens and see some hints at something, or do you know what I mean? Like, not just setting this up episodically, which I know this is episodic, but, having it being a rewarding experience in that way. It also seems to me that the Lucasfilm Story Group is kind of secondary to the films. They're kind of, when books come out or comic books or TV shows, they're kind of like playing catch up with the movies and like, how can we tie this with the movie, and not like have this book actually set something up that's going to come in, the next film or the next Han Solo movie, or do you know what I mean? Like, it's not this interwoven universe that I kind of wanted it to be as a fan. But I guess it doesn't matter in the end. I do want to leave with this, the story that I posted in 2016 from the Star Wars celebration that Pablo Hidalgo said on stage. And this is an example of how the story group, influences the films. In Star Wars The Force Awakens, Han Solo and Chewbacca discover that the Millennium Falcon has been on Jakku for years, and Han comments that he knew they should have double-checked the Western reaches. That isn't how it was originally written in the script. When Lawrence Kasdan and JJ Abrams wrote the original screenplay, Solo said that, quote, they should have double-checked the Outer Rim. Lucasfilm Story Group member Pablo Hidalgo informed Abrams that the Outer Rim was actually too large of an area for that line to really make sense, and suggested that it should be a smaller region in Star Wars galaxy, like the Western reaches. So I think that's like in a capsule, kind of how the Star Wars Story Group kind of has a conversation with the movies. They're there to be like, no, you can't do that with the Force. The Force, does this, and this. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're there to be the guidelines and the ruler and the measuring, but not the dictator. Is there any other thoughts on this?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that, and by the way, we don't know that there isn't an outline for the other Star Wars films. This is all assumptions, because no one involved in Star Wars talks about anything, because it's the secrecy. And with JJ Abrams coming on, we're going to be seeing less and less information getting out there.
Re-entering the mystery box, Peter.
Yes. Welcome back to the mystery box. I mean, it's interesting. I should mention, though, that when Star Wars Force Awakens was being made, none of the like kind of tie-in books and stuff were kind of like given information. Like JJ shut those people out of the mystery box. So they kind of like had to create those things last minute or with very few details. And, it kind of resulted in this, this less than connected feeling. Since then, the Lucasfilm Story Group and these other entities, I feel like it's been more connected. We see Saw Gerrera on Rebels at the same time that he's in Rogue One on the big screen, and there's kind of like that kind of continuity. And now the JJ Abrams is back in, and the mystery box is shut. Again, I think we're going to see that disconnected universe again, sadly. Again, if you want to send a question to the mailbag, send it to peter@slashfilm.com. Please mention your name and general geographic location in case we mention the question on the air. HT, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I'm on slashfilm.com. My Twitter is htran Bui, and I have a podcast, the Millennial Falcon Podcast, on iTunes.
And how about you, Jacob?
I am the managing editor at slashfilm.com, and I'm there every single day. You can also find me on Twitter, where I'm at Jacob S. Hall.
You can find me at /film and on /film.com. You can find all these stories on /film.com. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Just search /film daily. You will find us. If you're on iTunes, please give us a review. Rate us. It helps us out. Spread the word. And we will see you tomorrow.